Hello, welcome back. So, we are going to continue reading the novel Lord of the Mysteries, Volume 1, The Clown by Cuttlefish That Loves Diving. Um, Last time we read up to chapter 60, I think. What happened? We had a tarot card reading, I think, and um, uh, we had some uh, pages from Emperor Roselle's diary. So we had some information there. So let's continue with chapter 61. I haven't really read after this, I think after this part. I have seen the Tonghua of season 1, but yeah, I'm reading the novel for the first time now, going forward. So let's start with chapter 61, Strange Symbol. The fool that doesn't belong to this era, mysterious ruler above the grey fog, king of yellow and black who wields good luck. Audrey Hall recited the three descriptions to her silently. She suddenly felt a tumultuous wave of emotion go through her, preventing her from maintaining her spectator state. As an enthusiast of mysticism, she had learned Hermes that was used in rituals and had tested out the rituals that fellow noble enthusiasts mentioned in private gatherings before she was pulled into the great fog or made formal contact with the beyonder powers. None of these rituals had any effect, but they had given Audrey a basic understanding of the structure of incantation. Thus, she clearly knew what these three incantations described and signified. The descriptions usually described one of the seven gods that looked over this world. Thus, the fool's incantation was claiming status equal to the Lady of Crimson, Mother of Concealment, and the Empress of Misfortune and Horror. Is Mr. Fool the unknown, mysterious, powerful, godlike entity that Gland spoke of? Source of danger that we must avoid during rituals? Audrey quickly recalled the comments made during the strange rituals which she and her friends did not dare attempt back then. She was momentarily at a loss for words. Alger Wilson, who knew and understood much more than Audrey, shivered from the bottom of his heart. If the ritualistic magic which Mr. Fool designed truly points to him, to allow him to accept our requests, we would have to be addressing him with him. He is to be addressed in the third person, which is reserved for gods. How lucky, how smart I was to act in concert with him and not do anything foolish. Even when I was testing him, I did not step beyond the boundaries of normalcy. Could he perhaps be an ancient, mysterious, horrifying existence, only that he does not appear before us in his true form and name? The primordial demoness, the hidden sage, or the true creator, which many which many mysterious churches believe in? Alger understood that the fool was he was looking at now might not be his true form. He might not even have a gender or be a humanoid creature. Klein propped his forehead up with one hand and tapped on the table with the other hand. He quickly noticed the changes happening to the hangman and justice, but he acted as though nothing had happened, as if everything was within his expectation. He continued without any care. I pray for your help. I pray for your loving grace. I pray for you to give me a good dream. Moonflower, an herb that belongs to the red moon, please bestow your powers to my incantation. Fingered citron, a herb that belongs to the sun, please bestow your powers to my incantation. He finished describing the incantations that belonged to another type of ritual. After he was done, he smiled. Lady, sir, have you memorized it? Ah, Audrey exhaled. She quickly covered her mouth and recalled seriously. With her improved memory as a spectator, she quickly processed the information and repeated the incantation as a form of confirmation. Alger acted more normally. His pen did not stop for a moment, no matter what he was thinking about. After Klein confirmed that Audrey was correct, he smiled and said, "If this test is successful, then we shall modify the ritual next time to achieve what we want to do. I hope that you'll have the time to complete the ritual no later than Wednesday." He intended to come in here again on Thursday night to ascertain if the ritualistic magic was successful. As for why he did not allow the hangman and justice to directly request a leave of absence, Klein was worried that he would not be able to discern if the results were from them asking for leave or merely the outcome of an attempt of the ritualistic magic. If he was to pull them into the gathering, if that happened. "By your will," Alger and Audrey replied respectfully, collecting themselves. "According to the hangman's suggestions last week, we shall have time for casual conversation after all issues have been discussed. Who shall begin?" Klein gave a hand gesture signaling for someone to start. Audrey sighed and said, "Mr. Fool, the suggestion you made regarding the exam selection and the separation between civil and political matters has received the approvals of many members of the parliament. Perhaps it would become a reality. Of course, with the efficiency of this government, the bill will only appear half a year from now at the earliest." She was not worried that the hangman would track her down because, using this information, she had intentionally and intermittently dropped hints and guided those proud wives to think that they had conceived the idea. Those ladies had rushed to tell their husbands, fathers, and brothers. At that moment, Audrey felt as though she was watching a flock of golden peacocks showcasing their tail feathers. She believed that those women would drill it in themselves that they came up with the idea to claim the glory for themselves. They would soon forget about what Audrey's role in the matter was, fighting among themselves to see who thought of the suggestion first. Using this remarkable way of to change the system of a kingdom gave Audrey a weird sense of satisfaction, as if she found a way of a spectator to influence the plot of a play. "Let's hope so," Alger replied sarcastically. He paused for a few seconds and then glanced at the fool. He deliberated before saying, "In recent decades, the amount of activities of various secret organizations has seen an upward trend. In fact, there are even new secret organizations appearing, some of them having reached scale with a good number of beyonders. Are you trying to ask me for a reason? I have not even gained access to the information about illegal organizations." Clan merely smiled without commenting on the hangman's news. He changed the subject and said vaguely, "An ancient power is about to wake from its slumber. For example, the power represented by the Antigonus family diary." "Is that so?" Alger muttered softly to himself as though he recalled something. Clan swept his gaze towards the hangman, then past Justice, and said with a smile, "If there is nothing else to share, then let's end today's gathering here." By your will, Alger and Audrey stood up together. Clan moved his finger and severed the connection with the dark red stars. He watched as the two figures vanished from the magnificent palace. He stood up and turned towards his own chair, which was also the back of the seat of honor at the bronze table. He looked at its symbol. Radiant stars formed a strange symbol. It was not a symbol that fit anything in Klein's present understanding of mysticism. He observed it closely before identifying the pupilless eye, a symbol representing concealment. He also saw contorted lines that represented change. Each of the symbols was missing a portion and were overlapped with each other, creating a new symbol. An incomplete concealment and an incomplete change? What do we get when we add them together? Clan creased his brows and muttered to himself, unable to come up with an answer. He retracted his gaze and walked along the ancient, magnificent palace. His eyes scanned every corner of the palace. Back when I casually imagined this place, it was merely a rough concept. I did not describe the shape of the palace, table, or chairs. Where does this design come from? The best choice? The first prototype? or are they reflection of reality? Client suddenly had a clock question he neglected previously as he looked at the palace. I have to say, even though I am a keyboard warrior, I am lacking in experience in many areas. I'm also not observant enough, to the point of only realizing this question now. With such self reflection, Klein made a serious effort to examine every corner of the palace, but he did not find any other living thing or anything strange. Klein did not dare to venture deeper, which seems to be an illusory land without boundaries. He was afraid that he would come up completely lost. Wow, this place is indeed filled with mysteries. Who knows if there will be any changes in this area when I become more powerful? Klein sighed. He unleashed his spirituality and enveloped himself within, causing him to feel the rapid rush of plummeting. Everything flew past quickly. All kinds of illusions shattered. He tore through the grayish white fog and saw reality. He saw the tables, curtains, clothes rack in his room. Backland, Empress Burrow. Audrey saw the oil painting that hung on the wall. She felt the softness of the down feather pillow under her head provided. She did not stand up immediately. Instead, she seriously recalled what had happened during the gathering as if she was watching a play she had already watched. Mr. Fool had a certain confidence in his tone when he told us to try the ritual and gave us the descriptions of the mysterious ruler, the king of yellow and black. Confidence. Audrey exhaled as she was analyzing this silently, her body shuddering slightly. Forget it, since I cannot fight it, there's no need to think too much about it. Mr. Fool had always appeared friendly. He should not be an entity, he should be an entity that has respect for order. Audrey's mood improved rapidly. She thought about her acting and the weakening backlash of the potion. She hummed a merry tune and got off her bed. Then she walked towards the door and adjusted her state of mind, taking on her state as a spectator. As she opened the door of the room and she saw a maid walking past, she saw the old calluses on her hands, the marks on her face, and other similar details. She could deduce many things from these observations. At this point, Audrey had a strange feeling. She quickly turned to look at the shaded corner of the balcony. She saw her golden retriever Susie sitting there, silently observing her, just like she had observed the maid. My goddess! Audrey's lips twitched as she sighed. She wanted so much to hide her face. On the Sonia Sea, on the Sonia Sea in the heavily protected captain's quarters, Alger woke up and noticed that nothing had changed around him. It was as if nothing had happened. He sighed and thought to himself, an ancient existence? Klein, who had exited the ritual, pulled open the curtains. He took out his notebook and began writing again. He recalled the contents of Emperor Roselle's diary, hoping to reinforce the memory through writing and prevent himself from forgetting in the future. Klein reread the notes several times after he finished writing. Finally, he tore up the notes and incinerated them. I shouldn't forget the most salient points if I do this once a week. But with time and increasing complexity of my missions, how unfortunate I do not have better ideas for the time being. I have not yet learned any cryptography. Lion collected himself and stretched his neck. He planned on heading to the divination club. A seer was defined differently by different people. No one could say that another person's methods were wrong. So Clan, who did not know which kind of seer fit the requirements of the potion, could only correct it as he experimented to ascertain which one was the best fit. Chapter 62. The Seer's Suggestion. Before Clan left home, he took the time to meticulously clean up his suit and top hat with a small brush and a handkerchief. Then he washed his white shirt, changing it to a similar linen shirt along with the only decent cheap coat he had. He then briskly walked out onto the street. First, Melissa's dress, then Benson's suit, Only then can I consider a second suit for myself. Money is never enough. Besides, we need to save money to buy porcelain tableware for our guest. Plus, I have to save money to buy a variety of materials related to mysticism. Clarence sat on the public carriage and took note of the financial status at home. The more he did the math, more he shook his head. He reckoned he needed at least a year to let himself, his brother, his sister live as a middle class family. Of course, that was without taking promotions and pay rises into consideration. The public carriage drove past the streets and stopped opposite the Divination Club on Howe Street. Bland pressed down on his black top hat and hopped off the carriage. He walked along the familiar streets and entered the club located on the second floor. He then saw the beautiful brunette Angelica. There was a hint of swelled redness in her eyes, but she looked extremely relaxed. Klein raised his hand to tap his glabella lightly and carefully examined her. He found out that the grayness deep in his Angelica's emotional colors had disappeared, had greatly dispersed. It had been replaced with sunlight like whiteness. After taking it in, Klein walked over and took off his hat. He smiled. Madam Angelica, it's a lovely day today, isn't it? Angelica lifted her head and was briefly shocked. She then beamed. You're just like Mr. Vincent's cat. You don't make any sound while walking, do you? You managed to tell? I forgot you are a fortune teller skilled in face reading. She paused and then she gently bit her lip before bowing. Thank you. Thank you for your suggestion yesterday. I feel much better. I haven't been this relaxed, happy, and contented in a year. Upon hearing her show of sincere gratitude, Klein was infected with the joy and happiness she had. The corners of his lips lifted, and he said, It's my pleasure. As he spoke, he could feel his spirituality relax and turn livelier. Is this what the seer potion wants? A seer that can really help the inquirer? Klein pinched his glabella as though he was thinking before secretly tapping it twice. It had to be said that he found the action of activating and deactivating his spirit vision in practice con- insufficiently inconspicuous. However, the problem was that he hadn't thought of a better solution yet. As he had just become a seer recently, his spirituality had yet to reach its limits, and the same was applied to his mastery. Hence, there didn't seem to be many suitable location for the activation switch for his spiritual vision. The glabella was the best option so far. When I become a true seer after fully digesting the potion, I should be able to design a more inconspicuous activation motion. Client nodded unnoticeably and walked towards the half-opened meeting room. Coffee or tea? Angelica asked hurriedly. Desi coffee, Client answered. He planned on trying out all the drinks the Divination Club had to offer. Then he saw that there were 6 or 7 members present, but not Hannah's Vincent, who almost always was. Mr. Vincent isn't here? Clarence stopped in his tracks and asked a passing question. Angelica was taken aback as she said, Mr. Vincent doesn't come every day. He accepted an invitation to give lecture for a divination organization at Enmut Harbor. Are you looking for him? Not at all. I was just curious. After all, I have seen him every time I have come. Clarence shook his head with a smile. Meanwhile, he realized that there was a familiar face among the 7 members present. Glacis, who had divined for him before, was present. Glacis was reading some information on the table with his monocle when he suddenly sensed someone looking at him. He lifted his head and cast his gaze. Obvious joy suffused his face as he propped himself up with both hands and stood up. He dashed toward Klein and stopped. Good afternoon, Mr. Moretti. I have been wondering if you would come today. I heard from Angelica that you are not a doctor but a fortune teller who is good at face reading. Klein smiled. That's not the only thing I'm good at, Mr. Glacis. You no longer seem to be plagued by your ailment. He pinched his forehead and tapped his glabella twice. He noticed that Glacis' health colors had returned to normal. Yes, I was very grateful for not taking your suggestion. I was very regretful for not taking your suggestion back then. Luckily, there is a very amazing apothecary near my place. He gave my wife a magical medicine. He gave my wife a magical medicine which brought me away from death. Glacis said emotionally. As a quasi member of the Nighthawks, client asked out of occupational interest. Oh, a very amazing apothecary? Ma- A very magical medicine? Magical? How magical? Is it within the range of beyond us? He said it was kind of a folk medicine from Lemberg. In short, it helped with treating my illness a lot. Gleason answered without noticing anything abnormal about the question. Folk medicine apothecary? Client tapped his glabella as though he was thinking, what's his name? Where does he stay? As you know, even a fortune teller can't guarantee they will remain in the pink of health all the time. Perhaps I need to go purchase some medicine from him in the future. Client learned from his teacher and classmates that the current health system in the world was in a nascent state. There was almost no cure to many diseases, so the magical medicines and miraculous apothecaries still controlled the market. There was no harm in knowing more, since it could one day serve useful. Glacis answered honestly. His name is Lawson Darkwaite. He has a tiny store at 18 Ladd Street in Eastborough, named Lawson's Folk Herb Store. Thank you. Claire remembered it and spoke sincerely. Glacis turned around and invited him to sit beside him. At that moment, Angelica came over to serve the coffee she brewed. Compared to Southville coffee, Desi coffee is more fragrant but has quite an inferior taste. And took a sip and savored it for a moment. Glacis hurriedly deliberated his word when he saw Client put down his porcelain white cup. Mr. Moretti, can I request a divination from you? I'll pay according to the price you set. Eight, pen, 8 pence is sufficient. I'll not raise the price out of the blue. Klein was hoping that someone would request his divination service. Do you need a divination room? All right, Topaz. Glacis led the way with much more familiarity. After entering the divination room and locking the door, Klein sat beside the long table. He asked in the serious voice, Mr. Glacis, what would you like the divination to be about? I have an investment opportunity, but the amount of money it involves is huge. If it fails, my family and I will take a heavy hit. I wish to know if it will be a successful investment. Glacis volunteered the information. I have divined using tarot card previously, a divination after purifying my soul. The result was pretty good. Yes, I did the interpretation myself, but I did not violate any principles of those symbols. Clan thought and asked curiously, it would be great if you could describe the entire situation once more and give me your information again. It would be best if you had the other party's information too. We'll do an astrolabe divination. All right. Glacis organized his words and said, when Mr. Lavinus examined the Hornasus mountain range, he discovered a gigantic mine rich in high quality iron ore. He poured all his savings to buy that land and hired a professional company to survey it. The result was an heartening one. He lacks funds needed for the subsequent development, so he formed a steelworks company and intends to apply for a loan from bank using the project. At the same time, he will also issue a corresponding number of shares to raise its initial capital. The plan is it in st- the plan is still in its preparatory stage and promises fat returns. Klein, who had been reading newspapers recently and also happened to be an history expert, knew that there were shares in this world. He also knew that the concept of shares was derived from Emperor Roselle. Yeah, him again. During the colonization of the southern continent, he had set up the West Balam Company and solved the nation's fiduciary matters successfully by raising funds from public through issues of shares. As such, he had the first mover's advantage from colonization. Because the returns were great, this development continued on. For example, there were railway shares, mining shares, steam development shares, and so on and so forth. There were some that succeeded and there were some that failed. Hence, it catalyzed the formation of organizations that like Blackland Stock Exchange. Besides that, the Emperor Roselle had created national bonds, unit trusts, and other financial products. The former had become the most stable form of investment with the return of 4 to 6% interest. Klein remembered that Benson had once said that if he could inherit those £3,000, there was no need to work hard any further. Stable that annual interest of about 5% would result in annual income return of £150, roughly equivalent to an client's annual income at present. This is known as rentier capitalism. Client sighed and asked carefully, "Are you sure there's nothing wrong about it? About this? Is Levinus trustworthy? I've seen his property papers and the inspection report. There is a Civilos County government stamp and an endorsement of a professional company. Plus, inside Mr. Levenue's office, Leneview's Lenevus's office, is a group photo of him with Sir Dewey and the mayor. Glasses nodded in reply. Group photo, that doesn't mean anything. Klein, who was born in an era of information explosion, had seen too many similar incidents. He didn't buy the story because of that. However, it didn't matter if he believed or not. He could only pick up a pen and paper and draw a corresponding astrolabe according to the crucial time and information that Gleason had provided him with. After a long while, Klein pointed to the astrolabe and said, "You should be able to tell that this will be a very unsuccessful endeavor. Below the flourishing surface is a cliff, a chasm. My divination suggests going around it to avoid it." Glacis fell into silence, his mouth turning agape a few times before he closed it. A few minutes later, he said with a rueful smile, "I'll consider it carefully when I'm back." Upon hearing this answer, Klein could only shake his head with a silent sigh. He realized the helplessness of a seer. A seer could only give suggestion and not make decisions for others. As the two left the Topaz room, Angelica walked over and said, "Mr. Moretti, someone wishes for your divination." When she said that, she added with a whisper, "He did not ask for my recommendations, nor did he view the album. Has my reputation spread?" Client turned towards the reception hall in puzzlement. Chapter 63, Dream Interpretation. Client proceeded a few steps forward and saw the client. He was dressed in a formal black suit and half-top hat. He held a gold inlaid wooden cane and his short blonde hair flared from the sides. His nose was aquiline like a hawk's beak. Anna's fiancée, the Joyce Mayer that went through a terrifying ordeal, ordeal. Clan, who had seen him in his dream divination, immediately greeted him with a smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Mayer." "Good afternoon, Mr. Moretti." Joyce took off his hat and bowed in greeting. "Thank you for the advice you gave Anna. She cannot stop praising how miraculous you are." Klein chortled and said, "I did not change a thing. You should be thanking yourself. Without your determination and your hope for better tomorrow, you wouldn't have been able to overcome such an ordeal." After the exchange of pleasantries, Klein couldn't help but lampoon inwardly. Does this count as mutual professional bootlicking? In all honesty, I still find my coming back alive a dream. I still cannot believe that I survived wave after wave of terrifying ordeals. Josh shook his head wistfully. Without waiting for Klein's reply, he asked curiously, "You knew who I was the moment you saw me. Was that because of my unique nose or because you divined I would visit you?" "I have your detailed information. That is enough for a seer," Klein answered vaguely, behaving like how a charlatan would. Joyce was indeed stunned. More than 10 seconds later, he squeezed a smile. Mr. Moretti, I wish to request a divination from you. The moment he finished his sentence, he suddenly realized something. Mr. Clan Moretti had addressed himself as a seer, not a fortune teller. Seer. All right, let's use topaz. Clan gestured. At that moment, he felt as though he should have worn a long black robe. He tried to keep his words to a minimum to accentuate the mystique of a seer. Joyce Mayer locked the door behind him after entering the divination room. After he observed his surroundings, Clan seized the opportunity to tap his glabella twice and activated his spirit vision. Joyce sat down and set his cane down beside him. He pulled a black bow tie and said hoarsely, Mr. Moretti, I wish for you to interpret my dreams. Dream interpretation. Klein acted as though it was within his expectation, but was merely asking for confirmation. He saw that the colors representing Joyce's health were dull, but none of them signifying an impending illness. The colors symbolizing his emotions were predominantly blue, and its darkness showed that he was obviously high strung. Joyce nodded seriously. I've had the same horrific dream every night ever since the Alfalfa arrived at Enmet Harbor. I know that this could be associated with the trauma of the ordeal and that I should go to see a psychiatrist, but I suspect that this is no ordinary dream. A normal dream would definitely have some details that are different, even if they recur every night. But this dream is, at the very least, a constant in parts which I cannot recall. To a seer, this kind of dreams are seen as revelation given by the divine. Client said, half consoling, half explaining. Can you describe the dream to me? Joyce clenched his fists and hands held it to his mouth. He thought deep for a moment before saying, I dreamed that I was falling from the alfalfa into the ocean. The ocean was dark red as if it was filled with rotting blood. As I fell, I was grabbed by a person on the boat. I could not identify him, but I know that he was very strong. And I was also holding onto a person in an attempt to save him from falling into the sea. I know that person. He was the passenger of the Alfalfa, Eunice Kim. Because of his weight and his struggling, I could not bear the weight and could only release my hands and watch him get devoured by the sea of blood. At that moment, the person above me also released his hand. I flayed my arms, hoping to grab onto something, but there was nothing. I could only plummet rapidly. Then I wake up in horror, sweat covering my back and forehead. Klein held his forehead and gently rapped it as though he was thinking. He then organized his words and said, Mr. Mayor, nightmares, similar nightmares, and repeated nightmares, these are all physiological problems and have corresponding source. The same nightmare recurring time and again is a reminder from your spirituality. It is also a revelation given to you by the divine. Upon seeing Joyce appear confused, he elaborated, do not have any doubt. Ordinary person's spirituality is also capable of giving reminders. I do not know exactly what happened on the Alfalfa, but I can see that it was a tragedy of blood and steel. It has left a deep trauma in you. Seeing Joyce nod slightly, Klein continued, you must have been very horrified, very fearful on the ship. It is easy for a person to lose their observational skills when overwhelmed with such intense emotion, thus missing signs they should not have missed. This does not mean that you do not have seen those signs, but you have disregarded them. You understand? Disregarded. In your subconscious, in your spirituality, the details that you are missed are present all the same. If the thing that the detail is pointing towards is important enough, then your spirituality will remind you in the form of a dream. Previously, I had a similar case of disregarding a feeling, only later realized that the diary was with Ray Weber. But I was more sensitive and had stronger spirituality. I was also more knowledgeable about mysticism and thus could make a deduction more quickly. Client paused for a few seconds and looked into Joyce Mayer's eyes. Did Mr. Eunice Kim, who fell who you let fall into the sea of blood, requested you of something on the boat, but was ultimately unable to escape his fate? Joyce fidgeted his body unnaturally. He opened his mouth several times before answering, "Yes, but I do not pity him. Perhaps a few days or a week from now, you'll see in the newspaper how cruel and evil he was. He raped and murdered at least 3 ladies and tossed a baby into the Berserk Sea. He also led a bunch of savages who had lost their rationality and brutally massacred the passengers and the crew of the boat. He was scheming, strong, and evil. I did not dare, nor could I stop him. I would only have forfeited my life." "I'm not doubting what you did," Client said, making clear his stand. Then he explained, "But your dream is telling me that you are feeling regret and sorry. You believe that you should not have released your hand back then. Since you believe that killing him was an act of justice, then why are you feeling regret and sorry for it? So much so that you have recurring dreams about you releasing your hand?" "I don't know either." Joyce shook his head, confused. Klein crossed his hands and placed it under his chin. He attempted to analyze the situation. "Incorporating what I just described, it seems you have missed certain details. For instance, anything that Eunice Kim mentioned, the contents of his plea, the way he presented himself, etc. I cannot recall the incident for you, so please think about it carefully." "There's nothing. All he could say back then was, 'Spare me, I surrender,'" Joyce muttered in puzzlement. Klein did not know exactly what happened, so he could only guide him based on what he understood from the dream. "Perhaps you felt that Eunice Kim were most useful alive, that he could prove something or to explain something?" Joyce knitted his brows. It was a while before he said, "Perhaps. I still find conflict that arose on Alfalfa happened too suddenly and turned intense too quickly. It was as if the passive evil in everyone's heart just erupted uncontrollably. It was too abnormal, very abnormal. Perhaps, perhaps I wish to interrogate Eunice Kim why he acted as though he was possessed by the devil in the first place." Clarence suddenly had a stroke of inspiration upon hearing Joyce's dreamy description. He spoke mysteriously with a tone unique to a charlatan's. "No, that's not the only reason." "What?" Joyce seemed shocked. Klein crossed his hand and held his chin up. He stared straight into Joyce's eyes and said with a slow, yet forgetful, forceful tone, "Not only did you find the matter abnormal, you also saw some things you disregarded. And putting together these things you have that you disregarded results in a terrifying conclusion. Your spirituality is telling you that there is someone who should be under the highest suspicion, and that person is the one who had grabbed you but ultimately released his hand in the drain. You do not suspect him subconsciously, and thus you are unable to ide- identifying him. He's your partner. He once had control over your fate, or maybe even saved you before." Joyce leaned back suddenly, slamming into the back of the chair with a dull thud. His forehead slowly became laced with sweat. His eyes filled with confusion. I see it." Joyce suddenly stood up noisily, causing his chair to wobble and nearly fall. "Mr. Triss." He used all his energy in him to utter the name. He was a friendly and bashful little boy with a round face. He was a hero that saved the survivors. Clan did not interrupt Joyce's thoughts. He leaned back slightly and waited. Joyce's expression changed several times, finally returning to normal, a normal that had little paleness. He revealed a rueful smile. "I understand now. Thank you for interpreting my dream. Perhaps it is time for me to make trip to the police station." He took out his leather wallet and fished out a one solid note. "I do not think that money can fully represent your worth, and I can only give you price you ask for. This is for you." Joyce pushed the note towards Klein. "I wouldn't have minded if you gave me £10." One solely, you sure are like your fiance. Client kept up his mysterious vibe as a charlatan and said nothing, smiling as he pressed on the note. Joyce took a deep breath, wore his hat, and returned to walk towards the door. As he was unlocking the door, he suddenly turned back and said with sincerity, "Thank you, Master Moretti." Master? Klein laughed to himself. He watched as Joyce left the divination room and said silently to himself, "Whatever happened on the Alfalfa seems extraordinary. If only the captain was here, he would be able to understand everything that happened in the Mr. Joyce Mayer's dreams." Tuesday at dawn, Backland, Empress Burrow. Audrey, who had who woke up earlier, beckoned her golden retriever Susie over. She said with a serious tone, "Susie, you are also a beyonder now. We are the same kind." "You, no, what I mean is that we have to help each other. Guard the door later and don't let anyone disturb me. I have to conduct a ritual." Susie looked at her mistress and shook her tail in exasperation. Okay, we'll stop here for today. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye bye.